Hello and welcome to the Emotion at Work podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human condition. Now, as you regular listeners will know, we've not had a stories episode for a while, and stories episodes are ones whereby we want to find out from people what's it been like, what's their experience been like, and how has it been. And the last one we did actually was with me, so it was episode 41, which was me talking about my experience with chronic pain following my few rounds of surgery and stuff. But my guest today is someone that I am full of admiration for. And the overall kind of frame for this podcast then is about coping with uncontrollable change. Because what they've managed to achieve in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, just to achieve it in its own right would have been impressive. But to do it in the midst of everything that's been happening with coronavirus and COVID-19 and everything that's been happening in the world just blows my mind. So, without further ado, let's get our guest on the air. Welcome to the podcast, Dan Hone. Hi, Dan.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Well, about as well as we can be.
As well as you can be.
Doing okay.
Doing okay. And so for the audience's benefit, it's kind of, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of the second kind of lockdown in England. So that's so when we're saying as well as we can be, and that's one of the things that we want to talk about today in terms of the uncontrollable change side of things. Now, as per normal, then what I want to do is to open up with our unexpected yet innocuous question. So, Dan, my question for you today then is, what has been a good rainy day for you?
Oh, good question. A good rainy day would, for me, it's got to be just time with my girls and family. So a rainy day, essentially, I tell you what, there'll be two aspects to it. Because of the business I'm running now, a rainy day is a day where it brings joy because of owning an indoor football centre. So from that sense, I'm going to get plenty of bookings and the phone's going to be ringing. But on another sense, it's that comfort of putting on a film, sitting down on the sofa and just having that, put my laptop away, put my phone away and just having that time with the girls and just being present with them. As we go throughout this discussion, that's one thing that's really prevalent to me. And I think that a real good rainy day is the time spent wrapped up, fire on, film on, probably a Bailey's on ice, and then just time with the girls.
So I would never have put you down as a Bailey's person in all the conversations that we've had over time. No, I wouldn't know. So if you'd have said, well, what would be in Dan's hand, I would not have gone for Bailey's.
Yeah, so I love a red wine. I'm quite into my gins, but yeah, that my go-to at the minute. My go-to is just a Bailey's, just on ice. That's it. I think that's my the Irish kind of. I'm marrying an Irish wife and having that Irish tendencies. I love it. So I can kind of take or leave a Bailey's. I don't mind the odd one now and again, but I couldn't drink. It wouldn't be a go-to for me. Whereas my wife Anne, she absolutely loves it, especially in the winter months. She'll just happily. So what's your go-to?
On a rainy day, it would probably be a beer. I think it would be a beer.
Yeah.
So one of my favourite ones at the moment is partly because of the name. It's called Piston Broke. But it's piston as in like a piston that you would get in a car or like in an engine rather than pissed. But I love the play on words of Piston Broke. So that's one of my favorite, and it's local. It's local as well. So it also kind of supports the local economy stuff as well, which is a good thing for me. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but no, I think I'd go a beer, maybe a gin, especially a slow gin.
Oh yeah, my nan used to make slow gin, the best slow gin, unbelievable.
I've never made. So I made my own gin. I did like Ange and I did like a citrusy one. But I've never. And it was all right, but it wasn't as nice as I think it could have been. So maybe slow gin is a bit simpler to make. Maybe I should try a slow gin next time.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So you mentioned in the introduction there then that you own and run an indoor football centre. So and so and that, I guess, is the backdrop to what we want to talk about. So part of the reason I really wanted to record this podcast with you now is because when I look around on social media and I talk to people in my network, there are a lot of people that are struggling from a work perspective. Whether that be they're going through redundancy, they could be on furlough, and what I'm seeing then is people thinking, well, actually, is there something I can do? Whether can I run my own business? Can I be an entrepreneur in that way? And that's something that you've been doing, and you've done it whilst everything has kind of been happening with COVID at the same time. So should we kind of go back in time a little bit then, if that's all right? So can we go back in time, say, I don't know, January this year, when we were hearing that COVID existed, but we weren't thinking it was necessarily going to be a thing just yet, because it was kind of happening a long way away. And do you want to give us a summary of your, I guess, kind of 9 months, 11 months since then?
Yeah, so the whole arena has been a two-year process, from a thought in my head to initially finding a warehouse that we said no to originally, but then went away and kind of did a bit of thought around it and managed to make it work, because in Lincoln there is no warehouses available, especially accessible ones that would be an entry point for us. So we kind of was so fixated. Well, I was so focused and fixated for these 2 years of getting this thing off the ground, and we were kind of we put planning in the October prior to this. I'd sold my house, everything else to do it. So we hadn't even had planning permission, and I was all in. So we went through that process, and we got planning just after Christmas, which is great. But we didn't actually get the keys until February the 19th. So we had kind of 6 weeks from getting planning and getting it all signed over and sealed and everything else. And even when I took over in February, it was kind of, we'll be okay. There were still large groups around, and we thought, as long as it stays groups of 10, we'll be fine. And even prior to that, sort of the December to February, probably my naivety, I didn't really think it was going to affect us. UK being an island, thought, we'll be all right. We're an island. Surely they'll just shut the borders, not let anyone in, and we'll just carry on about our daily business. And even if it does, it's going to be limited. Lincoln's quite rural. We'll be fine. We'll just crack on. And I don't know whether I was too far down the line in terms of, I can't stop this now. I'm committed. I've just got to go with it. But I don't even think that came into my mind. It was more, I've wanted to do this. I'm going to make it work, and this is how I'm going to force it through. So even when I got the keys, it was hell for leather, and we literally, there's a lot of alterations to the building. So I had pre-planned and teed everyone up. We literally got the keys 11:30 and had people in at 12 o'clock doing the steel work, and ripping their way through it. So it was literally, a lot of this has been luck and a bit of planning and judgment from my part, but I've kind of forced the issue with contractors and stuff. Managed to get the steel in, and then we literally, lockdown came, they announced it, and the people that are laying the pitches, they managed to get finished on the Friday, and then obviously went straight into lockdown. And these guys are traveling from Leicester. So we literally, from February the 19th to March the 11th, when it officially got locked down, we got all the steel in, we got all the pitches in, and we had a base to work from. So in that sense, it was kind of a month worth of getting as much done as we can. And then lockdown came, and I didn't really know how it would unravel, how long it'd take. But for me, it was just a case of, well, I know what I'm doing, I'll just get it done. Because we'd hoping to open in April. So and we ended up opening August the 1st. Okay. So in sense of that, it was kind of yeah, it's a scary time really, because we quickly figured out the government grants and everything else were coming out. We weren't eligible because we weren't open, even though Kicks, my coaching company, was trading, and we are moving into this. The council just said, no, you weren't trading. Open the doors to the public from 11th of March. You're not eligible. So it was like, oh, okay. Well, I've still got thousands of pounds I need to spend, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to open. How do I deal with that? So yeah, it was a strange time, but yeah, my naivety was probably my biggest strength at that point, and I probably didn't realize it.
That's an interesting frame. My naivety was my biggest strength at that time. Tell me more about that. Sorry, if I can. I know I'm interrupting you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So yeah, man, naivety. I think knowing what I know now, and the kind of, not the stress, but just the ups and downs of, so we, like, noise assessments we had to have done. We had disputes with neighbours and different problems that came. I'm a good problem solver, but if I'd have known now what I knew back then, would I have taken on that challenge? I don't know. Like, there was one person in my life that says, go for it, it'll be really, really good, and that was my wife, Stacey. Everyone else was like, okay, I think you're mad, but if you think it'll work, go with it. And even like, yeah, people have given me, not the grief, but asked me quite a few times, like, what are you doing? Are you, like, you're mad? It's a massive challenge. It's a big risk. And like I said earlier, I sold my house to do it. And not many people would do that, but I just had that gut feeling that I knew it would work. So the naivety of me saying, well, it will just work, was probably that thing that I clung on to, that no, everything's gonna be all right. Like, at each point we've had an issue. I mean, we were due to open on August the 1st, and my building didn't get signed off. So the 1st of August was a Saturday, and the building didn't get signed off until 4:30 on the Friday before. So yeah, so like, you can imagine the stress and anxiety around that. And I had obviously 150 kids, parents, everything else coming in through those doors at 9 o'clock the next morning. But even through all of that, I was like, no, it'll be fine. We'll be able to do it. And it's just finding that calm within it. And I think that the naivety of brings a lot of learning and education through it. And I've learned so much, not about business and everything else that comes with the territory, but learn about myself and who I am as a person. And would anyone else have been able to cope with it? Very, very few. And does anyone else really understand? Not even my wife really understands the journey that I've had to kind of do, because I've guarded her quite a lot from it all, and burdened that on my own shoulders. And I know we've had discussions many a time, but even for that understanding, and then, like I say, I can't really explain the naivety other than that helped me just put one foot in front of the other and just keep going, because just that I had that feeling it would work.
Okay. So there's a few bits that have come out in there that I want to explore. And we'll come on to those in a bit. So one of those was, I was again interested by the way you kind of positioned it, as you guarded Stacey from it. Also, you talked about, you know, the kind of journey you've been on for who I am, and just keeping one foot going in front of another. But if I put myself in the listener's shoes, I wonder if there might be some useful kind of contextual stuff just to kind of, I guess, try and I guess paint the picture of where we are then. So you and I met through Kicks, which is a football coaching company that you run.
Yeah.
Through, and my son Joseph then attended that. And but your background before that, then, it was in football. So football's been a big part of your life all the way through. Is that right?
Yeah. So my background is as a professional footballer. I was at Lincoln City from the age of 11 all the way through their academy, signed professionally with them. Had varying managers, good and bad. Ended up leaving. I went off to put on loan at Darlington, Barrow. Came out of the full-time game, went part-time at Gainsborough. Went to Wembley, won at Wembley in the FA Trophy with North Ferriby. And at that point, I probably should have retired then, but I carried on and went to Halifax for a season. So yeah, I'm not dizzy heights of football, but enough to get paid to play football at a decent standard. And it became like a full-time job.
And so when you wanted to make that transition out of football then, and in, because as you say, it was not only the dizzy heights, but still being paid to play. When you then leave that environment and you have to then come into I don't know how I wanted to say the real world, but I'm not sure that's a description.
You're talking about what you're saying there is 100% correct. The real world. Football isn't the real world. It's a bubble. It's a strange, it's like no other, and it's really hard to even in part-time football, it's really hard to explain just the environment. It's such a brutal environment. It isn't the real world. You couldn't go into a football club. You would be treated totally differently to how you would in a normal business, and it's just expected. You just take it on the chin. You could perform at your best standard, but because your face doesn't fit with that manager, you could be out of a job the next day without any warning, without any kind of cut-off period, and then you've got nothing. You don't know when you're going to pay your next mortgage or anything like that. And I had no control over my own destiny with football. It was always other people's opinions of me, and that's never really sat right with me. And I really struggled. I'll say this to people, I used to hate football. I still do. My business has evolved around football, and there's elements I love of football, but I hated it. I hated games. I didn't mind training because there was just freedom just to have a bit of fun and run around and a kick about and stuff. But the matches, the worst time was probably at Halifax. And I used to coach in the morning, 9 till whatever time I had to leave, drive in my van wherever I needed to be in the country to play a football match. You get out, you'd be tired, you'd driven a couple of hours, and you had to just go out and perform. And even at part-time level. And then even if you make the slightest mistake, you've got a couple of thousand, it's probably about 6,000 at Halifax at the time, shouting a load of abuse at you. And they pay, and it's their right to do that. But it just didn't sit right with me. And I fell out. I remember playing at Wembley, and I couldn't wait to get off the pitch. That's for someone to say that, everyone will be like, oh, that's selfish. It's a boyhood dream. It was my boyhood dream. I always said, if I play at Wembley, I retire happy. But from my point of view, I just couldn't wait to get off that pitch. The fear around not winning, or making a mistake, I didn't know how to deal with my emotions at that time. And it was a really difficult place. And when I made the decision, when I left North Ferriby, I was going to retire. I had a few tears when a manager and everything else who was really good to me at that time. I said, I just need to retire. I've had enough. And I think I was 27 at the time. I said, I can't do it anymore. I've had enough. And again, the only person that supported me was my wife. And he said, you do what you want to do. I had a bit of a hard time for my dad, who's, again, a former professional footballer. He's like, you'll miss it. And so many other people have said, you can't retire. You're too young. You'll miss it. So I got offered a decent contract to go to Halifax, decent money. I was like, oh, right, I'm going to go for the money for the year. And that will kind of be the final nail in the coffin and I'll know then. So I went, and it was the worst season I've ever had. I was in such a bad place. But from that point of view, that was confirmation that I was doing the right thing. And hand on heart, since the day I walked away from football, I have not missed it one bit. I don't even, I love playing little five-a-side matches in here and have a little bit of fun. But I just don't like football. So yeah, it's difficult to say, and like you'll see football fans that for them it's like the ultimate, and you say, oh, footballers got the best job in the world. They have, because of the wages and everything else they get paid, but the stress and everything else that comes with it and the difficulty of it is like none other. And I find it very, very difficult to explain to other people, just like the brutality of it. It's a world like no other.
And at the risk of making I'm going to risk making a link where one doesn't exist now, and you, by all means, you can say no, Phil. You're chatting out your backside.
Yeah.
So when you were playing then, and you had that, and I suppose I'm not necessarily thinking about the performance aspect, but the lack of control. So the not being able to know, whether if you didn't perform well on this day, you might not have a contract as of Monday because you can just be fired and gone. Did any of that kind of come back during this whole period of time this year? Because you had no control over when you might open, or whether you could stay open, who you could allow in, when you could allow people in, what you could do, what you couldn't do, because all of that was just being dictated to you from a kind of based on government policy. So did any of that stuff kind of re-emerge for you or recur for you when all of this, everything that's been happening this year was going on?
So I touched upon it earlier. Like I've grown, and development for myself has been huge, and I'm still in control of this ship as such. So I class the arena as a bit of a big ship. I'm still maneuvering that where I want it to go, even with all the external factors that are imposed on the arena. Ultimately, the decisions, the business, how we move forward, still fall on my shoulders. So external factors, I've learned to hold my emotions out in front of me rather than being caught up within the business. Like I can see my emotions in front of me and deal with them at that point. And although external factors are controlling us to a certain degree, from my point of view, the ultimate thing is that I'm in control, and I can then guide where I want my business to go. And I ultimately, that, like I said earlier, that decision falls with me, and there's no reason that those external factors can impact that. Yes, people can't come through the door, but for me, like I'm in control of the bank accounts, I'm in control of the marketing, the business, and we can still maneuver through these kind of choppy seas as such and make a good progress forward. So yeah, it's there, but it's not as prominent as, like we say, with the football and stuff like that.
Okay. And you mentioned that it's on your shoulders. And is that a trait you have then, or is that something you commonly do? Do you tend to take a lot on your shoulders?
Yes. yeah. Without sounding, like I've always done it with football, with life in general. I've always taken that burden because I've always felt I'm strong-minded and I've got broad enough shoulders to take it. And I like to be challenged. I like to be the one where I say, right, there's a problem. How do we deal with it? How do we move forward? And I've always been like that. When our backs against the wall at football, it was always me that was shouting the loudest and just trying to drag everyone through. And I still feel like that now. And yeah, although I take on probably too much, I enjoy being able to be the one that made the challenge, like makes the challenge what it is. And I enjoy supporting others through challenging times and me guiding them in the right way. So for instance, right now, the first thing my staff said to me as soon as we came to lockdown, "Are we still going to get paid?" So I'll pay you and I'll help you do whatever we can to get through. And it's not a father figure as such, but it's almost like I love that leadership role. I love helping people flourish. in my old job, and I blame you for this, but I've got coaches that used to work for me that have gone off to Mexico, gone off to Florida, gone off to Australia, Gibraltar. Like we're without really wanting to be, I've become a coaching company that is an international coaching company because of how I feel like I led those guys and how I help them progress within themselves and challenge them to be better. So yeah, they do cross over a little bit, but it's ultimately the decisions fall with me, and I'm very comfortable with uncertainty if I can control the decision making, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And so that was going to be one of my questions that I was going to ask around so what strategies do you use to help you then? So when you've had, so that, actually, no, I don't want to ask that question yet. Sorry, I will come back to that question and ask in a minute. So
okay.
One of the things that you said I've got a growing list of things I want to come back to. That's the trouble. One of the things one of the ways you described it just now was you said, I can see my emotions in front of me. And that was a really interesting way of describing it. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that. What kind of, how have you, I suppose there's two aspects to it. One, how have you got to the point where you can do that? And then what do you do when you see those emotions in front of you then? So maybe let's start with the first one. So how have you got to that point where, go on.
So it's been a journey. Like I probably learned this within the last year. And obviously a lot of things have been chucked at me along this journey. And I really struggled with it when the government announced the rule of 6. So we're doing really well. We just had 3 days of no restrictions. We're allowed 5-a-side in the arena, and then we just got the okay to do indoor football. And then they announced 3 days later the rule of 6. And I really struggled at that point because I had such a high of getting indoor bit open just for it to be cut straight away. And that was the one point I really kind of had to really have that awareness around me of, right, my emotions are temporary at that point. And I love the business. I absolutely love being here. I love everything about the business and being within the business. But what I found myself in the early stages was I was really emotionally attached to the business, and I'd take things personally, or a business ebbs and flows and has waves, that I was riding that wave with it. So I was kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. Whereas as soon as I was like, hang on a minute, like I need to emotionally detach myself from the business and kind of have an overarching view above it. I quickly realized that my emotions couldn't be affected by the business, and I had to make sure I had that calm and composure. There's a word for it called equanimity, and I had to have that calmness and composure when all the noise and everything else is going on around me, that I can still make those clear-cut decisions and have that clarity of mind throughout. And just by having that awareness of me, how I'm feeling, me and my wife have kind of got a bit of a thing now where we just say, how are you? And we just know what that means. It's not just how are you, how's your day? It's how are you? How's your day going? Or how are you feeling? And that just helps you just reflect and understand yourself and your emotions. And just by detaching them and say, okay, that's what's happening. That's how I'm kind of feeling now. But how can I work through that? And seeing it, kind of holding it, almost visioning it that I'm holding my emotions out in my hands in front of me. How do they look? How can I cope with them? And how can I move them forward? Because ultimately, like your emotions are never constant, and you've taught me this over the last few years, that they're constantly changing, and they never stay around. So you might feel great one minute, but you'll feel rubbish because of an external something happening an hour later. And it's how do you kind of try to keep yourself on that even keel at all times. And that's the best way I've found, trying to detach myself as much as possible. Now that comes at a risk of being a little bit cold-hearted, especially with the transition of family and business. And that's something I'm still learning, but ultimately it kind of works at home as well, but that you just have to be a bit softer approach of it.
Okay. So that kind of merging of me and my business is something that it's, I guess, similarly as a business owner, is something that I've also struggled with over the years. And if the business isn't performing, then I have failed. There's no kind of almost no recognition of what else might be happening around it in terms of whether it be about where the economy's at or any of those things. If the business fails, I failed, and that kind of bringing the two things together is something that I've also worked with a lot over the years. And there's still one thing that gets me, which is the phrase of "a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush," and it's something that I really, really struggle to let go of, which is the idea that there's kind of there's easy to get low level revenue in the hand. So there's kind of like half of what you could get of what could be in the bush.
Yeah.
There's double it in the bush, and if you got that, then that's better.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I've always gone for the bird in the hand. I'm like, well, that's there. It's not guaranteed necessarily, but it's in my hand and I've got it. Whereas if I go chasing after that stuff over there, then it's harder to get. And even now, what am I, 9 years into running a business? It's still something that I have to kind of consciously grab myself with, to go, hang on, are you saying yes to that because that's the right thing to do and that's the right thing for the business and that's the right thing for where you want to take the business, or are you saying yes to that because it's a bird in the hand? And I still, when I reflect on stuff after, normally it's about I say 3 weeks. I don't know if that's an actual term. Anyway, at some point after I've said yes, I'll then sit there and I put my head in my hands and go, why on earth did I say yes to this? And I know why, because it was the bird in the hand versus the two in the bush. But so I get that kind of, because what's behind that is that the bird in the hand pays the bills, it pays the mortgage, it pays for the Christmas presents, it pays for whatever it is that we want to do, not the holidays, because we can't go on holiday at the minute. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the
It's kind of it's one of those where it's the risk element, and society as a whole, we are, through the education system and everything else, it's a whole another kettle of fish. We are trained, we are ingrained to be average and get what's easy. And especially with social media in these day and ages, it's kind of that instant gratification of where we're at in the world, and sometimes taking that risk and putting yourself through that turmoil. They always say that good things come when they're hard. Like it's always better when you challenge and you have to work hard for it. You're more grateful for it. Richard Branson had a brilliant quote, and I've read a few of his books and stuff like that, but he just said, if you don't know how to do it, say yes and learn how to do it later. Which is kind of like me at the minute. If you said to me at the start of this journey, do you know how to run a coaching company? No, but I'm going to learn. I like the idea of it. Do you know how to open up an arena? No, but I'm going to learn how to do it. And it's just always challenging yourself to a life of learning as such, as opposed to just bundling along and just being average and okay. That, I mean, for some that's happy. People are happy there and they're content. But for me, my personality is I like to be challenged. I want more all the time. Just to help me grow and learn.
So the other overlap you talked about then was the kind of overlap of family and business. So how has that been? Because you mentioned, so there's a few things you mentioned then. So you talked about how you guarded Stacey, but you also talked about how that overlap of family and business can be tricky. So how I don't know what question I want to ask, I suppose. Yeah, how have the last 6 months or so then impacted your home life?
Yeah, so massively. There's one key piece to this. and this comes from my footballing time again. When I was part-time, I was a dry liner as well, which is plasterboard and stuff, and had my own gang of lads. I was doing the coaching company and playing football. And I had my first little girl, Evelyn, who's 3 now. She was 6 weeks old at the time. And I came home, picked her up, and she cried at me like she didn't know me, and because I was doing like 90-hour weeks. And I was like, right, enough's enough. I'm not going to do this. So I quit football, quit dry lining, just focused on the coaching. So that's what I enjoyed. Yeah. Now, fast forward to now, I've got 2 little girls, one that's 1 and one that's 3. It's coming up to 4. But I've asked me and Stacey have sold our house, moved in with in-laws, with a newborn baby.
You're brave. I'll tell you what, you're brave. Yeah. My in-laws can occasionally listen to this podcast. I hope they don't hear this, but oh my goodness, you are brave. I wouldn't live in this.
But that was the sacrifice we had to make, and we didn't realize just how much we would have to sacrifice until now. And obviously the pandemic has caused that a little bit more, because I've been unable to employ another person that would relieve my time. So since we opened in August, since lockdown, I've been at the building every day. Pretty much built this building by myself with what we put in it and stuff like that. Then obviously we opened up. I had no staff, so I was working all the hours just to open and everything else. We then opened up fully in terms of the football pitch and stuff like that. I had 1 member of staff, so she was doing the days, I was doing the nights. We managed to employ 1 more guy in Cameron, who's been an absolute breath of fresh air. But even still, like 3 people working when we're open 9 till 10 every day, they can't do that many hours between them. So I've been literally on site 8 o'clock in the morning till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and my family life has taken a massive impact in terms of not seeing my girls, and that's one thing I'm very conscious about, how it's impacted the girls. They'll come to the arena, they'll run around, and especially when I'm quiet times, like Stacey will bring the girls to come and see me, and I love that they've been able to see and live through this journey with us in what we're creating. And I hope that instills something in them about my work ethic and what's pretty much achievable. I know they're still young, but they're in and around this all the time. But yeah, there's been a lot of tears on my part. Stacey totally understands, and she'll wait up for me, even though I couldn't do what she's doing. Like, she's got it worse than me because she's got the 2 girls, and Evelyn goes to nursery 2 days a week. So she's a full-time mum, and that is hard, especially when I'm not around. She's got to do the cooking, the tea, bath, and everything else. And the girls are like, they're lively. They're not, they don't just sit there and do nothing. They're lively girls, bless them. So yeah, that's the one thing that I've always been guarded against and cautious about, how I impact them. Long term, great. We hopefully this is building a life for them that they wouldn't have had otherwise. But right here and now, I probably struggle more than they do, because I'm conscious of it, I'm aware of it, and I kind of live and breathe, and I miss them. And it's got to the point just before lockdown where I could have a Monday morning off. So Evelyn would be at gymnastics, so I'd have Eleanor and take her for a walk, just me and her. And I would seek, not just sitting there with that time, but I'd walk with her and just go within nature and just let my mind rest and just be present with her. And then obviously I'd take Evelyn swimming on a Tuesday afternoon, so I'd have that one-to-one time with her as well. And they were literally, that was all the time I had. A couple of hours on a Monday morning and a couple of hours on a Tuesday where I'd see them, and I might be able to nip in and see them here and there. But that's the hardest bit. That is the hardest bit, juggling life and business, and ultimately maintaining a relationship with my wife, because she's almost becomes a single parent, and then obviously a lot of things get missed and communication gets lost because I'm at work all the time, and by the time we get to talk, I may be 2 or 3 days past a problem that's already happened, and she's wanting to be involved in the business, but the business moves that quickly that we're like passing ships in the night, that communication gets lost, and then I become a very lonely kind of business leader with a family elsewhere, and she becomes a very lonely single parent. Like Stacey's support has been incredible for me, and how she does it, I don't know, but yeah, that's been the biggest challenge for sure.
And again, I guess I risk a loaded question then. Is it a challenge that you feel you've cracked?
No, far from it. Far from it. I am constantly juggling my time and needing to get to the gym because of how that makes me work and how it helps me focus and stuff like that. And my lifestyle, my diet, I'm constantly having to battle with that, making sure I'm actually eating, because you just get lost in your working day. And then trying to fit around the family, like, no, it'll take. I haven't cracked it at all. And half the time I feel like I'm just winging it. And there's always people saying about the imposter syndrome. That's a massive thing. And like the business is still in its infancy, and it's my little baby, and I need to give it that nurture and grow it and everything else. But I've also got to give my wife and kids nurture and help them. But I'm trying to find the balance, and we're trying to alleviate that little bit of stress and with that, and trying to work around it. And the communication with Stacey is a lot better, and we make sure we schedule in that time just to speak to each other. But yeah, it's a huge challenge, and you'll know because you've travelled here, there, and everywhere with work. It's a juggling act, and where do you draw the line?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was tempted to ask you what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs out there? But I don't want to do that, because sometimes I think, we can talk about what we should do, whereas I think it might be useful to talk about what we can do. So you said that, you think, so I said, do you think you cracked it? You said no. At the same time, you feel like you've made steps in the right direction. So what have been some of those steps that you have done then? So what have been some of those things that you have done to make it better?
Scheduling in the rota with the staff that we have got, that no, I'm off at this point, do not ring me, like, and I've tried to. Now we're getting the ebb and the flow of the business, and we see where the quiet times are. I can pick that time where, right, we're quiet now, but I can remove myself from that point, and that's only gonna increase when we get more members of staff. I'm going to be less needed. So but what we're probably not mentioned as well is that I've built this business from the ground up, so I know everything about it. And one thing I'm not good at is delegating off things. And I wouldn't say I'm not good at it. I just, I'm protective of the fragility of the business at the minute because of the pandemic. So, and having the whole business that I've built pretty much it's not in my head because I've got files and everything else, but giving that time one-to-one with staff to help them learn the different steps and processes and the standards that we expect, it's not an overnight thing. That will come. I've hired very well with the first 2 members of staff, and I hope I'll continue to do that. But it's making sure that they're kind of following my lead as such at the minute in terms of standards that set. Like, I hate being this if the staff are in before me. I hate it if I go home before them, because I don't know, that's just that leadership kind of instilled within me. But yeah, I've certainly not cracked it, but I'm certainly on the way to having that awareness. And I think that's a key word with all of these emotions and there's nothing else. You just having that awareness of myself, that, yeah, I acknowledge it and I'm making steps to do it. It's not going to happen overnight, but the steps are there.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it potentially, anyway, it links back to your broad shoulders thing. that you taking it on yourself to get the team through and when I say the team, then I could be talking about the football team or the team with an active arena, but you taking it, you taking that responsibility to provide that leadership and pull the team through. And at the same time, the awareness that, oh man, I don't know how this is sustainable, because I can't come in before everybody else and go home after everybody else and be and feel like I'm being a good dad and feel like I'm being a good husband and all those other things that go with it. And I guess because one of the mistakes I made, I think early on, was that Ange and I didn't agree the priority order. So we kind of had this implicit agreement that the business came first, and whatever needed to happen to make the business work, because I was the principal. So I set my business up in 2011, right in the middle of a recession, and then my wife and I decided we would then have a third child. So Joseph was born then in 2013. And it was probably in 2014 or maybe 15. So we're talking like 4 years in before we actually sat down and went, right, what is the order then? So if I get offered to do a 5-day gig in Manchester, and then I get a day at home, and then I've got a 6-day gig in Italy, and then I've got a day at home, and then I've got a 4-day gig in London, all of that combined is worth 10 grand. Does that 10 grand take precedent over seeing my family twice in 20 something days?
Yeah.
And it was only through those conversations that we agreed like what the threshold was where we would say no. And that was really, it was hard to get to and hard to navigate, because sometimes something would come in that would break the rules. Like, it would mean being away for more than 2 weeks in a row, or it would mean that not being home, or whatever the rule, I can't remember what exactly they were that we said at the time.
Yeah.
But we would then go, oh yeah, but there's this money, there's that money over there you could get. And so that, but having that explicit conversation rather than it being just like an implicit thing between us was, I remember for us, was quite important.
Yeah, I mean, money's not my driving force, and I totally understand like the priorities and stuff. And we've probably not figured it out yet, because every day is different here at the minute. There's no 2 days the same, and like it's a tough one, because I need that time for myself. Because when I'm in business, I'm in business mode, I'm focused and driven. I go home and I've got to switch to being dad again. And like, I don't get that downtime. And Stacey wants to talk, and then you start talking about the business again, because like she's not caught up on the day, and the priorities get a bit merged. So I love to play golf, and a couple of times it was through lockdown, I was playing like once, twice a week, which is fine. Like I was doing my work and then just popping out of an evening or whatever. But now I've got to really choose my priorities in terms of, right, I've got I've got a Sunday afternoon off. Last booking is 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock or something like that. I can leave one of the members of staff here. I can go play golf, or I can go and spend my time with my family. But where the release within it is, there is no release for me, but yeah, it's really difficult to pick those moments. And like, I'll have my mates ring me saying, "Are we playing golf this weekend?" It's a real battle constantly to choose those priorities. And Stacey understands I need that time. But what I found myself doing, I'll go and play golf, but I'll be 100, 200 yards in front of everyone, not with my drive, but just like walking pace, because like I'm still in business mode and I can't switch off. I'll be thinking about the business, my phone will go, and like, so I'll be racing around the golf course, and they've got a 9 till 5, and they just jaunt along and enjoy the time. Whereas I need that time, but then I'm kind of thinking, well, I need this time, but I need to be doing that as well. I need to spend time there. You just get lost in a transition, and I'm trying to create a more of awareness around that and the priorities of family, business, and my kind of me time. And that's not, I've mentioned that, but I've not even brought in family, friends, or anything like that in that time either. So, and you'll see a lot of business leaders say that they're lonely and they don't have many friends and stuff. And I can count on one hand how many friends I've got, and I can count on one hand how many times I see them a year. But I'll ring them and stuff like that throughout the year, or throughout the week and stuff. But yeah, it's a constant battle, a constant battle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can get that. So the other area that I said I wanted to come back to then was when you said, I've had a real, that's my words, no. So you said, I'm clearer about who I am. So if I was to say, all right, then, well, who is Dan Hone today then? Or who are you now, on the 24th of November at 12:27? If I was to describe you who you are then, who are you now?
I'm a person that's driven, understanding of what drives me, why I'm doing it. There's a lot of things that I still want to work through, and in terms of understanding why I'm like this. But I, at the age of 10, I think it was 10 or 11, I had meningitis. So I was literally an hour away from dying. And I think that's the trigger point for all of what I've done in life. Okay. And I don't know, I love building things and creating things in terms of for other people to enjoy. Like just this weekend gone, I built a rocket out of cardboard for my daughter, and we painted and everything else. I love creating things that make people happy, and I love just challenge. It's a difficult one. I don't fully understand myself because I'm still early in this journey. But the overriding thing is I'm driven, confident, I'm assured in who I am, in sense of I don't seek external validation. I don't seek other people's opinions or approval. I'm comfortable with who I am. Like I will cry in front of people emotionally. I'm quite attached to where I'm at. So yeah, I think just a content kind of person that is just seeking learning all the time. Yeah, I think that's probably the toughest question I've been asked to date. Who am I? Because I've had to change so much from being a footballer that I've grown up and all I ever wanted to be, to totally transition into something totally different, to being a coach that I said I'd never be. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, or is it a bit vague?
No, answers the question. No, absolutely answers the question. So I suppose I'm thinking then. All right. So if I'm listening to this podcast then, and I've got to change, there's something that's maybe forcing me to change, or meaning I need to change, or maybe I've got that gut feeling that I kind of, that I think there's something I can do, or something that I want to pursue. What lesson would you want to share with someone who's in that place? So somebody who's thinking, right, I want to start a business, I want to follow a dream, I want to, there's this thing that I've got in my gut that I just think I can make work. What would be a lesson that you've learned that you would want to share with someone in that place?
It ultimately comes down to why you're doing it. If you want to set up a business for the money, or the lifestyle that is portrayed with entrepreneurs, then it's not going to work. There has to be something deep within you that you almost have a feeling that you have to do it, regardless of external factors or anything like that. You have that overriding feeling, I have to do this because this makes me happy and this is what I get satisfaction from, and that's fulfillment. Without that, it becomes a very, you'll never truly be happy, I believe, with what you're doing. and you'll be always searching for different things and seeking that kind of, you see like expensive cars don't drive me, but I see if I had one, that novelty will wear off in a couple of months, and I'll be seeking more all the time. And I'm like that with business, but myself, it's just being happy within yourself, and ultimately that will guide you in the right direction within business. Just ultimately having that inner belief in what you're doing, and that inner purpose of why you're doing it, as opposed to just doing it because that'll bring me a lot of money.
And so would yours be what you were saying recently then about building things that make people happy?
Yeah, so I built the arena because it served the purpose with kicks, but it's also helped me with different programs such as disability programs. And I did a coaching session with some of them the other day, and I absolutely loved it. Just their enthusiasm and their passion. Like, they've got, in the nicest possible way, they've got nothing. They're looked after people, but their enjoyment for life and the basic things of just me delivering a football session, that really fulfilled me, and I absolutely loved it. And it's almost, I've always called it, we're called Active Arena, but I want to be a community hub that supports all, whether that be 18-month-old kids that come for their first ever kick session, to a 100-year-old bloke that wants to come and play indoor football, walk-in football. I want to be able to be that pillar of the community where we are helping. We're just about to hopefully do a program for mental health. I love helping people. I love supporting people, and I want to impact as many people's lives as I can in a positive way. I always thought it was, I'm going to leave a legacy, and I've been the first ever indoor football centre in Lincoln, and that's a bit of history, but that doesn't fulfill me. That doesn't drive me. It's seeing people's enjoyment out of what we have created, and giving them that sense of belonging to something that we've created.
That's amazing. Love that. All right, I think I want to start putting us together and wrapping us up, because that was just such a wonderful kind of summary information. I don't feel like I want to ask any more questions about that. So in terms of maybe stuff then, in terms of helping the listener then. So are there any kind of books or videos or or maybe the kind of talks or podcasts or anything that you've kind of experienced or that you think, if this is something you were thinking of doing, here are some stuff that I think might be helpful for you. Anything you would recommend in that?
Yeah, so there's 4 things. Okay. There's two books. Shoe Dog by The Journey of Nike.
Okay.
Incredible business book. Just this whole story of Nike and how they lived on they call it a flow of cash flow month to month, and we're talking millions of pounds here, and just how they came through adversity, battling against Adidas, and just the whole Michael Jordan, how that came about. All of that, just the story of Nike is an incredible journey. So if you haven't read Shoe Dog, go and read it.
Okay, that's on my list, and I've not read it.
Yeah,
okay.
Or listen to it. And then Journey of a Lifetime by Robert Iger. He's the CEO of Disney. Again, huge risk in terms of taking over Pixar, and I won't give too much away, but just him working, basically dealing with different businesses, and it's just an incredible story of someone sat at the top of a huge, worldwide corporation. So those 2 books are huge, and ones I've read twice, 3 times now.
Okay, wonderful.
There's so much learning from it. So there's one podcast that's behind yours that I listen to a lot, that is brilliant, and his name is Stephen Bartlett, and his podcast is Diary of a CEO, and he's a young bloke, younger than me, and he's built a marketing business. And his outlook on life is just, he talks openly and honestly in his podcast. He interviews other people, and he's just honest in everything that he does. And I just find him incredible. So his podcast is just, brilliant. And then, so those ones are good. What was the other one? Trying to think what the one.
So I said it was 4 things. It was 2 books.
Yeah.
So the Nightbook, the Disney book, the Diary of a CEO podcast, and
I'm trying to think what the last one was now. I've forgotten about it.
Not to worry. When it comes back to you, you can email.
Sorry, Joe Wicks. His I'm not into all the other people, but Joe Wicks, what he's created just through fitness and that, but just him as a person, and how he talks. So yeah, him. Just follow him on Instagram or whatever. And also, sorry, that one more. I've lied to you.
Yeah, go on. That's fine. Go on.
Ben Francis, the owner of Gymshark. So he's again a young lad, built up gym clothing business, and just his story of how he's built from making T-shirts and stuff in his garage to a multi-billion-pound company is just incredible, and he's not even 30 yet. So yeah, those 5 things are things I intend on listening to daily. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And I will put links to all of those in the show notes for this episode as well. Is there any guests that you think we should seek out? Is there anyone that you would recommend that I need to get in touch with and say, Dan Holmes said you should come on my podcast?
There's a guy, who is brilliant about mindset and everything else. So I played with him at Lincoln. Bit of a weird guy, I thought at the time, that I didn't understand him. I now understand him, and he is very, very good in what he does and very bright. His name's Drew Broughton. You might remember him from Lincoln, but he's now a performance life coach person. But all of it, you'll find him on LinkedIn. But his outlook on the footballing world, the emotional world, and he talks a lot about fear. And how to deal with that, and just coping mechanisms and everything else. He is he's an incredible guy for him. Okay,
wonderful. Thank you. And if people wanted to get hold of you to either book a session at Active Arena in Lincoln, or if they wanted to kind of just to find out more, how would you like people to kind of seek you out? Is there somewhere you want them to go and visit, or how would you like people to get hold of you if that's what they wanted to do?
Yeah, so it's nice and easy on best way probably is LinkedIn for talking to me that way. Just Daniel Hone on LinkedIn. If you wanted to book a session, obviously our website is www.activearena.co.uk, or you can email me or the staff at info@activearena.co.uk. They're probably the best 3 ways to get hold of me.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll put the email addresses and links to your profile and to the website in the show notes as well. All right then, Dan. So is there anything else then? Anything else that you're thinking, feeling, or want to say before I close this off?
No, I think we've covered a lot, but from a personal point of view, I just want to say a massive thank you for you. If people haven't reached out to you and spoken to you yet, please do. Phil's been an incredible part of my journey and helped me a lot with understanding myself a little bit more and helping my staff on their journey. So yeah, incredible person, and keep doing what you're doing, Phil, and thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Dan. That's very kind of you to say. All right.
My pleasure.
Okay, in that case, then I'll leave it there. So thank you so much for your time, Dan. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast today. And yeah, I'll catch up with you soon.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
You've been listening to the Emotion at Work podcast, and if you got this far, you must be interested in the role that emotions have in the workplace, either within individuals, between people in teams, or in organisations as a whole. So head over to the Emotion at Work hub, which you can find at community.emotionatwork.co.uk. Thanks for listening.